The knife was an inch from Janet's throat when time stopped. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally stopped. She could see the blade's edge catching warehouse light, could count the rivulets of someone else's blood still wet on the steel, could read the murder in her attacker's eyes, frozen mid-strike. Her lungs were screaming for air she couldn't draw. Her heart had stopped mid-beat. This was death, and death had a face, and that face was smiling. Then the world crashed back into motion. The knife never completed its journey. Her attacker's head snapped sideways with a crack that sounded like a branch breaking. His body crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. And standing where empty air had been a heartbeat before was a man who looked like he'd been carved from midnight and violence. Tattoos crawled up his throat like ancient scriptures written in a language of pain and power. His suit was midnight black and probably cost more than Janet's entire year of university tuition. His eyes were darker than the soul sky above them, and when those eyes locked on hers, Janet felt something shift in the universe, like two planets entering each other's gravity and knowing collision was inevitable. "Breathe," he commanded in English, wrapped in a Korean accent thick as smoke. "You're safe now?" Janet sucked in air like a drowning woman breaching the surface. Around them, 4 more bodies were hitting the ground, their weapons clattering on blood-slicked concrete. She hadn't even seen him move. One moment, she was about to die. The next, her would-be killers were decorating the alley in various states of unconsciousness, and worse. Who are you?" she managed, her voice shaking, her entire body trembling with adrenaline and terror and something else she couldn't name. The man didn't answer immediately. He was scanning the alley with predator's eyes, calculating exits and threats with the kind of efficiency that spoke of a lifetime navigating violence. When he finally looked back at her, something in his expression softened just slightly, like winter ice developing a hairline crack. "Someone who doesn't let beautiful women die in my city," he said simply. Then he extended a hand, tattooed fingers steady where hers were shaking. "Can you stand?" Janet took his hand. The moment their skin touched, she felt it. A jolt of recognition that made no logical sense, like her soul knew his before her mind could catch up. He pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness, his grip firm but careful, like he understood exactly how much force to use and refused to use more. "I'm Minho," he said, still holding her hand, his thumb unconsciously tracing her racing pulse. "And you should not be in this part of Seoul after dark." "I'm Janet," she replied, finding her voice, finding her spine, finding that core of Nigerian steel that had gotten her through medical school in a foreign country where people regularly underestimated the girl from Lagos. "And I live 3 blocks from here. This is my neighborhood." Something like respect flickered in Minho's dark eyes. "Not anymore," he said quietly. "The men who just tried to kill you, they're from the Guac syndicate. They don't forget faces, they don't forgive witnesses. And now they've seen you with me, which makes everything infinitely more complicated." "Complicated how?" Minho's jaw tightened. "Complicated as in you just became the most dangerous liability in Seoul, and the only way to keep you breathing is to make you untouchable." 3 years later, Janet understood exactly what he'd meant, and she was suffocating from being untouchable. She lay in their bedroom in sheets that cost more than her mother's house in Lagos, staring at a ceiling that had been hand-painted by an artist, flown in from Milan. Everything in this room screamed wealth and power and privilege. The custom furniture, the original artwork, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline like they owned the city itself. And Janet had never felt more like she was dying. 273 nights. That's how long it had been since Minho had touched her with anything beyond clinical politeness, since he'd looked at her with those dark eyes that had once consumed her like fire, since he'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. 273 nights of sleeping beside a ghost wearing her husband's face. The bedroom door opened with a whisper of expensive hinges. Minho entered, still dressed in the charcoal suit he'd worn to whatever meeting had kept him away until 4 in the morning. He looked like walking sin and controlled violence, every line of his body speaking of power barely leashed. He began his nightly ritual. Remove the cufflinks, hang the jacket, unbutton the shirt, each movement precise, practiced, mechanical. He never looked at her. Not once. As if she were invisible, as if she were furniture, as if she were anything except the woman he'd married in a ceremony that had felt like a fairy tale and turned into a nightmare of isolation. Minho, Janet said quietly, her Nigerian accent thickening with emotion the way it always did when she was hurting. Look at me. His hands stilled on his shirt buttons. For just a moment she thought he might actually do it. Might actually acknowledge she existed as more than an obligation he was honor-bound to protect. Then he resumed unbuttoning, his voice flat as winter ground. You should be asleep. Something inside Janet cracked, not broke. She'd been breaking for 3 years. This was something different. This was the sound of a woman who'd bent as far as she could bend, finally deciding to stand straight, consequences be damned. I should be a lot of things, she said, pushing back the silk sheets and standing. I should be loved. I should be touched. I should be something more than a prisoner in a mansion you built to keep me safe from everything except loneliness. Minho's entire body went rigid. Janet? No, she interrupted, and her voice was steady now, certain now, done now. For 3 years I've made excuses. You're busy. You're stressed. You're protecting me. I've lied to myself 1,000 different ways to explain why the man I love treats me like I'm made of glass. He's afraid to shatter. She moved to the closet and pulled out the suitcase she'd hidden there 2 days ago. But I'm done making excuses. I'm done pretending this is a marriage. I'm done dying slowly in this beautiful cage. Real quick, if this story is hitting different, do me a solid and smash that like button. You'll see why in a minute. Trust me. Now back to the story. The sound of the suitcase hitting the bed seemed to echo like a gunshot. Minho finally turned, finally looked at her, and the expression on his face made Janet's breath catch. It wasn't indifference, it wasn't coldness. It was absolute terror. What are you doing? His voice was barely a whisper, stripped of its usual control. What does it look like? Janet began pulling clothes from drawers, each item a small rebellion, each fold a declaration of independence. I'm leaving. I'm going back to Lagos, back to my family, back to a life where I exist as more than a beautiful ghost haunting your guilty conscience. You can't. Minho crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand shooting out to grip her wrist. Not hard. He never hurt her, not physically, but desperate. Janet, you can't leave. It's not safe. She laughed, and it came out broken. Safe? You want to talk to me about safe? I've been safe for 3 years, Minho. Safe and miserable. Safe and invisible. Safe and so desperately alone, I sometimes forget what my own voice sounds like because you won't even have a conversation with me anymore. That's not... He stopped himself, his jaw working like he was physically fighting words that wanted to escape. Not what? Janet demanded, tears streaming down her face now, 3 years of pain finally finding voice. Not true? Not fair. What exactly isn't it, Minho? Because from where I'm standing, I married a man who looked at me like I hung the moon, and I woke up next to a stranger who can't stand to be in the same room with me. Her hand knocked against the nightstand, and the drawer slid open. Papers scattered across the floor. Janet bent to gather them automatically, irritation cutting through her grief until she saw what they were. Photographs. Hundreds of them. All of her. Her breath stopped in her throat. There she was sleeping, unaware someone was watching with reverent eyes. There she was laughing at something on her phone, joy captured in high definition. There she was cooking breakfast in his shirt, dancing to music only she could hear. There she was reading medical journals on the balcony, her natural hair haloed in morning light. Moment after moment after moment stolen and saved and treasured in secret. Minho, she whispered, her hands shaking as she sifted through evidence of an obsession hidden behind indifference. What is this? He dropped to his knees beside her, reaching for the photographs like they were simultaneously sacred and damning. Don't, he said hoarsely. Please, Janet, don't. But her attention had already shifted to something else that had tumbled from the drawer. A journal. Leather-bound, expensive, worn from constant use. The kind of thing someone wrote in religiously, pouring their soul onto pages they thought no one would ever see. She grabbed it before Minho could stop her. His hand shot out, but she was faster, already opening to a random page, already reading words that made her world tilt on its axis. Day 1047. She wore yellow today. It makes her skin glow like she's lit from within. I wanted to tell her she looked beautiful. Instead, I left for work without breakfast because being in the same room with her and not touching her is killing me slowly. Day 1095. I watched her sleep again. I know it's wrong. I know it's obsessive. But these stolen moments when I can look at her without fear, without guilt, without the crushing weight of knowing she'll die because of me, these are the only moments I feel alive anymore. Day 1123. She asked me today why I married her if I can't even hold her hand. The pain in her voice almost broke me. I wanted to say, I married you because not marrying you meant watching you die. I stay away because loving you means signing your death warrant. I'm cold because warmth would make this real, and real things in my world bleed and break and get buried in graves I visit in the rain. Janet's vision blurred with tears as she flipped through page after page of confessions, each one a window into a soul she thought she'd never see. Love her too much to touch her. Love her too desperately to let her close. Every person I've ever loved has died screaming my name, and I will not add hers to the list of ghosts that haunt my sleep. Today is our anniversary. 3 years of marriage. I bought her diamonds. What I wanted to give her was myself, but myself is the most dangerous gift I have. So I gave her stones and stayed away, and I watched her try to hide her disappointment, and I died a little more inside. If something happens to her, when something happens to her, because in my world it's always when, never if. I want to remember everything. The way she hums while she cooks, the way she falls asleep reading medical journals, the way she says my name when she thinks I can't hear her, soft and sad and still somehow loving. I am the worst kind of coward. I married her to save her life, and I'm killing her slowly with distance. But slow death is better than the alternative. Slow death means she keeps breathing, and her breathing is the only thing that matters. Minho, Janet breathed, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. You love me. He was shaking. This man who commanded an empire, who made grown men fear his shadow, who moved through Seoul's underworld like a dark god. He was shaking like a boy caught in a truth too immense to bear. Everyone I love dies, he said, and his voice was breaking on every word. My mother, executed in front of me when I was 16. My sister buried when I was 22, killed because someone wanted to hurt me, and she was the easiest target. And Yuna... His voice cracked like splintering ice. The woman I loved before you. They took her, Janet. The Guac Syndicate, the same people who tried to kill you that night. They took her and they tortured her for 4 days, and I heard every scream on the phone they sent me. Every plea for help. Every moment her mind broke a little more. He looked at Janet with eyes full of ghosts and guilt, and a pain so deep she could drown in it. I found her on the 5th day. They'd left her alive just long enough for me to watch her die. And the last thing she said, the very last thing, was, I'm sorry I loved you. Janet's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. So when I saved you that night, Minho continued, his fists clenching and unclenching against his thighs. When I realized the Guac Syndicate had seen you with me, marked you as someone I cared about, I had 2 choices. Let you go and pray they'd lose interest. or bind you to me so completely, so publicly, that killing you would mean starting a war even they couldn't survive. You married me to protect me, Janet whispered. I married you to keep you alive, Minho corrected, and his voice was raw as an open wound. Every moment of distance, every night I refused to touch you, every morning I left before you woke up. It was all calculated, Janet, all designed to make everyone believe you were just a contract, just an obligation, just a woman I married for political reasons and didn't actually care about, he laughed bitterly. The irony is I failed spectacularly. My enemies still figured it out. They always do. They're not stupid. They watched me assign your family in Lagos a protection detail worth millions. They noticed that anyone who disrespected you tended to disappear. They saw the way I look at you when I think no one's watching. How do you look at me? Janet asked softly. Minho met her eyes, and what she saw there stole her breath. Like you're the sun, and I'm a planet trapped in your orbit. Like you're oxygen and I'm suffocating without you. Like you're the only good thing in my dark world, and I'm terrified of staining you with my darkness. Janet dropped the journal and reached for his face with both hands. Minho flinched like her touch burned, but she didn't pull away. For the first time in 3 years, she touched her husband's face, felt the sharp line of his jaw beneath her palms, felt the way his entire body trembled like he was coming apart. I would have chosen you anyway, she said fiercely, her Nigerian roots showing through that iron core that had survived Lagos traffic and medical school in a foreign language and 3 years of isolation in a golden cage. Even knowing the danger, even knowing I might die, I would have chosen one day of being truly loved by you over a lifetime of this safe misery. You don't understand what you're saying. I understand perfectly, Janet interrupted. I'm Nigerian, Minho. We're born understanding that life is dangerous, that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, that the only thing worse than dying is never really living at all. She pulled his face closer until their foreheads touched. I didn't survive Lagos just to exist in Seoul. I didn't leave everything I knew just to be kept like a precious stone in a vault you never open. I'm not made of glass. I'm made of the same fire that forged you. If I let myself love you the way I want to, Minho whispered, his voice wrecked and wanting, I won't be able to stop. I won't be able to pull away. You'll see every obsessive, possessive, dangerous part of me I've kept locked away. Good, Janet breathed. Stop protecting me from yourself. Stop protecting me from your love. Show me everything. Minho's control shattered. He closed the distance between them and kissed her like a man dying of thirst who'd finally found water. Like 3 years of starvation finally given permission to feast. His mouth claimed hers with desperate hunger, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer like he was trying to fuse them into one being. Janet gasped against him, her fingers clutching his shirt, kissing him back with equal ferocity. This was what marriage should feel like. This was what love looked like when it stopped hiding behind walls of fear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minho pressed his forehead against hers. I will never pull away from you again, he vowed. Whatever happens, whatever threatens us, you're mine and I'm done pretending otherwise. Promise me, Jana demanded. I promise. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent, sealing the vow between them like a sacred oath. That's when every alarm in the mansion started screaming. The sound was deafening, urgent, mechanical, the kind of warning that meant the impossible had happened. Minho's entire body transformed in an instant. The vulnerable man vanished, replaced by something lethal and precise. Down, he commanded, his voice suddenly cold steel. Now. But before Janet could move, the bedroom window exploded inward in a cascade of glass and automatic gunfire. Minho threw himself over her, his body a shield, his arms locked around her as bullets tore through luxury like it was paper. Stay behind me, Minho growled against her hair, already pulling a weapon from somewhere Janet hadn't known he kept guns. "Do not leave my side. Understand?" Janet nodded, too shocked to speak, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might break through her ribs. Through the shattered window, she could hear shouting in Korean, in Mandarin, in languages she didn't recognize, the sounds of a war being fought in the home she'd thought was impenetrable. Minho's enemies had finally come. And now, with 3 years of distance shattered in a single moment of honesty, they would learn exactly what happened when someone threatened the only thing Seoul's most feared mafia boss had ever truly loved. What happened next would be seared into Janet's memory forever. Minho moved like violence given human form, like death choreographed by someone who'd spent a lifetime perfecting the art of killing. He fired 6 shots through the shattered window in rapid succession. 6 bodies dropped outside, their weapons clattering on marble. Another intruder burst through the bedroom door, rifle raised. Minho didn't hesitate. He closed the distance in 3 strides, disarmed the man with a brutal motion that made bones snap audibly, and finished him with cold efficiency that should have terrified Janet but somehow didn't. This was who Minho truly was. Not the distant husband, not the man who hid behind walls of silence. This was the mafia boss who ruled Seoul's underworld, the monster who'd been protecting her all along by pretending he didn't care. "Stay here," Minho commanded, already moving toward the hallway where more footsteps thundered. But Janet didn't stay. She grabbed the fallen rifle. She'd learned to shoot at 17 from her uncle in Lagos, had maintained the skill even in Seoul because being prepared had saved her life before. She checked the magazine with practiced efficiency and followed her husband into war. Minho spun at the sound of her footsteps, shock and fury warring on his face. "I told you to—" "We're done with distance, remember?" Janet said, her voice steady despite the chaos, despite the terror, despite everything. "You promised. No more pulling away. That means I fight beside you, not behind you." For a split second, something like pride flickered in Minho's eyes. Then he nodded once, sharp and accepting. "Stay close. Follow my lead. And if I tell you to run—" "I won't," Janet interrupted. "So don't waste breath telling me to." They moved through the mansion like a unit, Minho's lethal grace complemented by Janet's steady aim. His security team was engaged throughout the estate, the sounds of gunfire echoing from multiple directions. This wasn't a random attack. This was an assault, coordinated and professional. Minho led her through hidden passages she'd never known existed, his hand never leaving hers except when he needed to fire. They reached a reinforced door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. "Inside," Minho ordered, keying a code into the panel. The door opened to reveal a room lined with weapons and surveillance monitors, showing every angle of their estate. A panic room. Of course he had a panic room. On the monitors, Janet could see the carnage, 20, maybe 30 hostiles in tactical gear, moving through their home with military precision. This wasn't the Guac Syndicate. Their patches showed different symbols, different allegiances. "Who are they?" Janet asked. Minho's jaw clenched as he studied the screens. "The Baek organization. They're from Beijing. I destroyed their operation in Seoul 6 months ago after discovering they were trafficking children from Southeast Asia." His hands curled into fists. "They swore revenge. They swore they'd take everything from me the way I took everything from them." He turned to Janet and the fear in his eyes was primal. "They came for you. Not me. You. They bypassed every security measure specifically to reach our bedroom. They want to take you from me, and then they want to make me watch while they—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Janet's blood ran cold. "My family. In Lagos." Minho was already on his phone speaking rapid Korean. After 30 seconds, he looked at her, and the relief on his face was palpable. "They're safe. I moved them to a secure location 3 months ago when I heard the bike organization was planning something. Your mother, your sisters, your nieces, all safe." "You've been protecting them," Janet whispered. All this time. You love them, Minho said simply. That makes them mine to protect too. Before Janet could respond, one of the monitors showed movement that made her heart stop. A figure in black tactical gear was spray painting something on their living room wall in massive letters. Park Minho. Come alone or we burn Lagos to the ground. You have 1 hour. They're bluffing, Minho said immediately. They don't have the resources to… His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and went white as death. He turned the phone toward Janet. A video just 10 seconds long. It showed her childhood home in Lagos, the one her mother still lived in. Armed men standing outside, weapons visible, gasoline cans being positioned. The message was clear. Come alone or everyone she loved died screaming. No, Janet whispered. No, no, no. I'm going, Minho said immediately, his voice flat, decided. I'm going alone and I'm ending this. Like hell you are, Janet shot back, that Nigerian steel rising to the surface. You think I'm going to let you walk into a death trap while I hide in this room? You think that's the woman you married? Janet, they'll kill you. They'll kill you first, she interrupted fiercely. You go alone, you die. Then they kill me anyway. Then they burn Lagos anyway because they're not interested in mercy, they're interested in maximum pain. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. You said no more distance. You said we face things together. So we go together, we fight together, and we end this together. Those are the only options I'm accepting. Minho stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly devastatingly, he smiled. A real smile, full of admiration and terror and love so fierce it was almost frightening. You're going to get us both killed, he said. Then we'll die together, Janet replied. But I'm betting we don't die at all. Minho kissed her hard and fast, then pulled away and started loading weapons with lethal efficiency. If we're doing this, we're doing it my way. You follow every command I give without question. Understand? I understand you'll give commands. Whether I follow them depends on whether they're stupid, Janet said, checking her own weapon. Despite everything, Minho laughed. My fearless, stubborn, magnificent wife. Your only wife, Janet corrected. Now let's go save my family and destroy some human traffickers. They exited the panic room to find Minho's security team regrouping in the main hall. 40 men, all armed, all loyal, all waiting for orders. Minho addressed them in Korean, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made grown men stand straighter. Then he switched to English, probably for Janet's benefit. The Beck organization thinks they can threaten my family and walk away. They're wrong. We move now. We hit them hard. And we show them exactly what happens when you make an enemy of Park Minho. A chorus of agreement. Janet stood beside him, rifle in hand, her presence a silent declaration that she was no longer the untouchable wife hidden away. She was his partner, his equal, the woman who'd chosen the monster and all his darkness. They loaded into a convoy of black SUVs, Minho's hand never leaving hers. As they drove through Seoul's pre-dawn streets, he leaned close and whispered, After this is over, I'm taking you to Lagos. I'm meeting your mother properly, and I'm spending the rest of our lives making up for 3 years of keeping you at arm's length. I'm holding you to that, Janet whispered back. I'm counting on it. The Bayek organization had chosen an abandoned factory on the outskirts of Seoul for their trap. Classic tactical position, multiple exits, high ground, plenty of cover. They were expecting Minho to come alone, desperate and vulnerable. Instead, he brought an army, and he brought his wife. The battle that followed was brutal and decisive. Minho's forces hit the factory from 4 directions simultaneously, overwhelming the Bayek organization's defensive positions. Minho and Janet moved through the chaos together, covering each other's backs, moving like they'd been fighting side by side for years instead of minutes. Janet discovered she was good at this. Maybe it was the medical training that made her calm under pressure. Maybe it was the Lagos survival instinct that made her unshakable. Whatever it was, she moved through violence with surprising grace, her aim steady, her nerves ice. They found the Bayek organization's leader in the factory's control room, surrounded by his remaining men, watching his operation crumble on security monitors. He looked up as Minho and Janet entered, weapons raised, and smiled coldly. "Park Minho," he said in English. "And you brought the wife. How romantic. How monumentally stupid." "Songwei," Minho replied, his voice flat as winter ground. "You trafficked children. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" "Consequences?" Songwei laughed. "You destroyed a $1 billion operation. You killed my brother. You think killing me ends this? You think destroying my organization ends this?" He leaned forward, and his smile widened. "There are a dozen more organizations just like mine, and now they all know your weakness. They all know that the great Park Minho, Seoul's untouchable mafia boss, has a wife he actually loves." His eyes slid to Janet. "She's beautiful. I can see why you'd risk everything for her. But beauty doesn't stop bullets, Park. Love doesn't prevent death. Ask Yuna." Minho went absolutely still. "Don't say her name." "Why not? She screamed it often enough before she died." "Minho, please save me. Minho, please make it stop. Minho, I love you. I'm sorry, I love you." Minho moved faster than thought. One moment he was standing beside Janet. The next he had Songwei by the throat, lifting him off the ground, murder written in every line of his body. "You don't get to say her name," Minho growled. "You don't get to use her death as a weapon, and you sure as hell don't get to threaten my wife." Songwei's face was turning purple, but he managed to choke out words. "Kill me, and watch what happens. To everyone you love." That's when Janet noticed it. Songwei's hand moving subtly toward his pocket, towards something that looked suspiciously like a detonator. "Minho," she said sharply. "His hand." Minho saw it too. He dropped Songwei and kicked the device away in the same motion. It skittered across the floor, coming to rest against the wall, its LED display showing a countdown. 3 minutes, 2 minutes 59 seconds, 2 minutes 58 seconds. "The factory!" Songwei gasped, laughing even as he clutched his throat. "I've wired the entire factory. You've got 3 minutes to run, Park. 3 minutes to choose between capturing me and saving your men." Minho's face went cold as death. He barked orders in Korean into his radio. "Everyone out, now. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." Then he turned back to Songwei, and what Janet saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. "No," she said immediately. "Minho, we're leaving. We're leaving right now." "He trafficked children," Minho said quietly. "He killed Yuna. He threatened you. He threatened your family. He doesn't get to walk away from this. And you don't get to die here," Janet shot back, grabbing his arm. "I didn't choose to stand beside you just to watch you commit suicide for revenge. We leave, together, now." 2 minutes 30 seconds. Minho looked at Songwei, then at Janet, then back at Songwei. The war happening behind his eyes was visible, visceral. Revenge versus love. Justice versus survival. The man he'd been versus the man he was becoming. "You don't walk away from this," he said finally to Songwei. "But you don't get my life either. You get Korean prison, and I get to wake up beside my wife tomorrow." He grabbed Songwei and hauled him toward the exit, Janet covering their retreat. They burst out of the factory with seconds to spare, Minho's forces already evacuated to safe distance. The explosion was massive. The factory went up in a fireball that lit the Seoul sky like a second sun. The shockwave knocked them all to the ground, heat washing over them in waves. When Janet looked back, the building was gone, nothing but twisted metal and flames reaching toward the sky. Songwei was laughing, even as Minho's men dragged him away. "You think you won? You think this is over?" Every organization in Asia now knows Park Minho's weakness. Every enemy you've ever made knows exactly how to destroy you. He looked directly at Janet. "You should have stayed in Lagos, beautiful. At least then you'd live long enough to have children before someone cut your throat to hurt him." Minho hit him so hard Janet heard teeth break. "Take him," he ordered his men. Let the authorities have him. Let him rot in prison knowing he failed. As Songwei was dragged away, still laughing, Minho turned to Janet. His face was covered in soot, his suit was ruined, and he looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I almost lost you, he said, his voice breaking. Again, I almost— But you didn't, Janet interrupted, pulling him into her arms, not caring about the soot or the blood or the fact that they were standing in front of 40 of his men. We're both alive, we're both here, together. They held each other in the ruins of the factory, surrounded by the aftermath of violence, and Janet realized something profound. This was her life now. This was what loving Minho meant. Danger and violence and choices between impossible options, and she wouldn't change a single thing. They drove back to the mansion as dawn broke over Seoul. Minho's hand never left hers, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist like he was confirming she was real. She was here. She was his. Back at their destroyed bedroom, standing among broken glass and bullet holes, Minho pulled Janet close. 3 years, he said quietly. I wasted 3 years trying to keep you safe by keeping you distant. And all I did was make us both miserable. Then don't waste another day, Janet replied. Love me the way you've been writing about in that journal. Love me the way you photograph me when you think I'm sleeping. Love me the way I see in your eyes when you think I'm not looking. If I do that, Minho warned, I'll be possessive, obsessive. I'll want to know where you are every moment. I'll assign you guards you don't need just because it makes me feel better. I'll be the monster everyone warns you about. Good, Janet said, rising on her toes to kiss him. Be the monster. Be obsessive. Be possessive. Just be mine while you're doing it. Minho kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like 3 years of starvation was finally ending, like he'd been given permission to want her the way he'd been desperately wanting her all along. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Minho's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. You should check that, Janet said reluctantly. Minho pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and went absolutely white. What? Janet asked, fear spiking through her. What is it? Minho turned the phone toward her, and Janet felt her blood turn to ice. It was a video message, 10 seconds long, but those 10 seconds rewrote everything Janet thought she knew about their story. The video showed a woman, Korean, stunningly beautiful despite the jagged scar running from her temple to her jaw. She was holding up today's newspaper, Proof of Life, her eyes locked directly on the camera with an intensity that made Janet's skin crawl. Hello, Minho, the woman said, her voice like silk over razor blades. Did you miss me? Did you mourn me properly? Did you replace me well? She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd died and come back wrong. 3 years I've been dead. 3 years you've been playing house with your pretty little doctor. 3 years I've been planning this moment. The camera pulled back to reveal she wasn't alone. Behind her stood at least 20 armed men, their tactical gear bearing symbols Janet didn't recognize, and behind them, displayed on massive screens, were photographs. Hundreds of them. Of Minho and Janet. Of their mansion. Of her family in Lagos. Of their entire life laid bare and exposed. The Bayek organization was just the appetizer, the woman continued. A little test to see if you still had your edge, if your love for her had made you soft. And oh, Minho, you've gotten so deliciously soft. She leaned closer to the camera, her scarred face filling the screen. I've spent 3 years building an empire of everyone you've ever wronged. Every syndicate you've destroyed, every enemy you've made, every person who has a reason to want you dead. And I've united them all under one simple promise. Help me destroy Park Minho, and you can have everything he's built. But I don't want to just kill you, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Death is too merciful. No, I want to take everything from you the way you took everything from me. I want you to watch me dismantle your empire piece by piece, I want you to see everyone you love die knowing you can't save them. Her eyes, when they focused on the camera, were absolutely mad. Starting with her, your beautiful Nigerian wife, the one you love so much you spent 3 years pretending you didn't, the one you'd burn the world for, the one whose life I'm going to end so slowly, so painfully, that you'll beg me to kill you just to make it stop. She blew a kiss at the camera. See you soon, my love. We have so much catching up to do. Una. The video ended. Silence filled the destroyed bedroom like a living thing. Janet stared at the phone, her mind racing, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. The woman Minho had mourned. The woman whose death had broken him so completely he'd pushed Janet away for 3 years. The woman whose memory had haunted their entire marriage. She was alive, and she was coming for them with an army. That's impossible, Minho whispered, his voice hollow with shock. She's dead. I buried her. I mourned her. She's alive, Janet finished, the word tasting like ash. Minho, she's alive, and she knows everything about us. Minho's hands were shaking as he replayed the video, his eyes scanning every detail with the desperate intensity of a man trying to find proof this was fake, a trick, anything except the nightmare it appeared to be. I watched her die, he said, his voice breaking. I held her while she took her last breath. I felt her heart stop. This isn't... It can't be. His phone buzzed again. Another message, this time a photograph. It showed Una standing in front of a specific building. A building Janet recognized from when Minho had taken her on a rare outing months ago. The message was simple. I'm already in Seoul, and I'm closer than you think. The building in the photograph was 6 blocks from their mansion. Janet watched the color drain from Minho's face as understanding crashed over him. She's been here, watching us. Maybe for weeks. Maybe for months. He pulled up security footage on his phone with shaking fingers, scrolling back through days of recordings. There, 3 weeks ago. A woman in a medical mask and hat, walking past their gates. 2 weeks ago, sitting in a cafe across the street. 1 week ago, standing in the crowd at a charity event Minho had attended, close enough to touch. Oh God, Minho breathed. She's been stalking us. Planning this. Watching me fall in love with you. Watching me try to protect you. Watching every moment of our marriage while she assembled her revenge. Janet's mind was racing, medical training kicking in even as fear threatened to overwhelm her. If she was that close, why didn't she strike? Why wait? Why reveal herself now? Minho's eyes went dark with realization. Because she didn't want to just kill us. She wanted us to know it was coming. She wanted me to be terrified. She wanted to take away the one thing I finally let myself have. Peace, hope, love. He turned to Janet, and the devastation in his eyes was absolute. This is my fault, all of it. I thought she was dead, I mourned her, I moved on, and apparently she was alive the whole time, watching me replace her, watching me fall in love with someone else. You didn't replace her, Janet said firmly, even as her own fear threatened to choke her. You survived, you healed, you found love again. That's not betrayal, Minho, that's being human. She won't see it that way, Minho said quietly. She'll see it as the ultimate betrayal. I loved her. She was tortured because of that love, and while she was suffering, I was marrying someone else. He ran his hands through his hair, looking more lost than Janet had ever seen him. But I don't understand. I buried her. I identified her body. His eyes widened with sudden terrible understanding. Unless they never killed her at all. Unless the torture, the phone calls, the body, all of it was staged. A way to break me, to make me think she was dead, to make me vulnerable. Why would they do that? Janet asked. Because killing her would have made me a martyr, Minho said slowly, pieces falling into place. But breaking me, making me think I'd failed to save her, making me live with that guilt, that destroys me from the inside, that makes me the monster everyone fears, but also the man too broken to effectively lead. He looked at his phone again, at Yuna's scarred face frozen on the screen. The scar. She didn't have that before. They did torture her, maybe for days, maybe for weeks, but instead of killing her, they kept her alive, turned her, made her into a weapon aimed directly at my heart. Or she was always a weapon, Janet said quietly, her analytical mind cutting through emotion to see the tactical situation. Minho, what if she was never the victim you thought she was? What if she was planted in your life from the beginning? A long-term operation to get close to you, learn your weaknesses, and destroy you from within? Minho stared at her like she'd struck him. No. Yuna loved me. We were together for 2 years. She couldn't have been faking. For 2 years, she was perfectly positioned to learn everything about your operation, Janet interrupted gently but firmly. Your routines, your safe houses, your allies, your enemies, and then she died in a way that traumatized you so completely you spent 3 years afraid to love again. That's not just revenge, Minho. That's psychological warfare at the highest level. The truth of it was written in Minho's eyes. Horror. Recognition. The slow, terrible understanding that everything he'd believed about Yuna might have been a lie. If that's true, he said slowly, then she's been planning this for 5 years. 5 years of patience, of building alliances, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment is now, Janet said. When you've finally opened yourself up to love again. When you have something to lose that matters more than your empire. She took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. I know you're hurt. I know you're scared. I know your past just came back from the dead with an army and a vendetta. But we don't have time for shock right now. We need to think. We need to plan. We need to survive. Minho took a shuddering breath, and Janet watched him pull himself together. Watched the broken man transform back into the mafia boss who'd ruled Seoul's underworld for a decade. You're right, he said, his voice steadying. Emotion later, survival now. He started pacing, his tactical mind engaging. She has an army of my enemies, which means she has access to everything they know about me. Every safe house, every escape route, every contingency plan I've ever made. What does she want? Janet asked. Really want? Because if she just wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. She had opportunities. She let them pass. Minho stopped pacing. She wants me to suffer. She wants me to watch you die, knowing I couldn't prevent it. She wants me broken and alone and destroyed from the inside out. Then we don't give her that, Janet said firmly. We don't play her game. We don't react the way she expects. What are you suggesting? Pressure to think through problems methodically. She expects you to hide me away, to send me to some secure location while you handle this alone, right? Minho nodded slowly. So we do the opposite, Janet said. I stay. We face her together. And we show her that her entire plan is based on a false assumption. What false assumption? That loving me makes you weak, Janet said. She thinks your love for me is a vulnerability she can exploit. But what if it's actually your greatest strength? What if instead of dividing us, her return unites us? What if the woman she's trying to destroy me, to hurt, is actually the weapon you need to defeat her? Minho stared at her with something like awe. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to use us as bait, Janet corrected. She's expecting you to be paralyzed by fear, by guilt, by the past. Instead, we go on the offensive. We find her before she finds us. We flip her trap back on her. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous, Janet interrupted. Staying here is dangerous. Running is dangerous. Hiding is dangerous. At least this way, we control the narrative. We choose the battlefield. We decide how this ends instead of letting her write our ending. Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, incredibly, he smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile, the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. My magnificent, terrifying wife, he said quietly. Are you sure about this? Because once we start down this path, there's no going back. Yuna won't stop until one of you is dead. Then I guess we'd better make sure it's not me, Janet said. Minho pulled her close, kissing her forehead, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the storm coming. I've spent 3 years trying to protect you by keeping you distant. It didn't work, so we try your way. We fight together. We end this together. How do we find her? Janet asked. Minho's smile turned predatory. We don't find her. We make her come to us. She wants a confrontation. We give her one. But on our terms, our location, our rules. He pulled out his phone and started making calls in rapid Korean, issuing orders with the kind of authority that moved mountains. His entire network mobilizing, pieces moving into position on a chessboard Janet couldn't fully see yet. After the 10th call, he turned back to her. I'm calling in every favor I have, every ally, every contact, every person who owes me. If Yuna has united my enemies, then I am uniting everyone else. By tomorrow, we'll have an army of our own. And then? Then we make her an offer she can't refuse, Minho said. A meeting, public location, neutral ground, just the 3 of us. No armies, no backup, just 3 people settling what should have been settled 3 years ago. She'll never accept that, Janet said. She will, Minho replied with absolute certainty, because she doesn't want me dead. She wants me broken, and the only way to truly break me is face to face, making me watch while she destroys everything I love. She'll come because her ego won't let her stay away. Janet took a deep breath, committing to this insane plan. Where? Namsan Tower, Minho said. Top of Seoul. Glass walls, 360-degree visibility, impossible to approach unseen. We make it a spectacle. We make it public enough that she can't just kill us without consequences. When? Tomorrow night, Minho said. We give her 24 hours to stew, to plan, to convince herself she's already won, and then we show her exactly what happens when she threatens the wrong family. As if summoning her with their words, Minho's phone buzzed again. Another message from Yuna. I know what you're planning, Minho. I've always known what you're planning. That's what 3 years of patience buys. The ability to think 3 moves ahead of you. Tomorrow night, Namsan Tower. Bring your wife. Let's end this the way it should have ended 3 years ago. May the best woman win his heart. Or what's left of it after I'm done. See you there, my love? Minho and Janet looked at each other, the same thought reflected in both their eyes. She'd predicted their move, planned for it, was already 3 steps ahead. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be a massacre. And they were walking into it anyway because the alternative was living in fear forever, and neither of them was built for that. Last chance to change your mind, Minho said quietly. I can still send you away, Lagos, London, Tokyo, anywhere but here. No, Janet said firmly. We finish this, together. Minho kissed her then, slow and deep and full of everything he couldn't say. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. If we die tomorrow, we won't, Janet interrupted. But if we do, Minho continued, I want you to know these past 3 years, even the painful parts, were worth it. Knowing you, loving you, being loved by you, it was worth every moment of fear. We're not going to die, Janet said with more confidence than she felt. We're going to survive. We're going to defeat her. And then we're going to Lagos so you can meet my mother properly and I can show you where I came from. Promise? I promise. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Minho called in every resource, every ally, every tactical advantage he could muster. His entire organization mobilized for war. Safe houses were established, escape routes were planned, weapons were distributed, and through it all, Janet stayed by his side, learning the intricate dance of his world, understanding for the first time the weight he carried, the constant calculation between violence and mercy, power and vulnerability. That night, they lay together in their destroyed bedroom, neither of them able to sleep. Minho held her close, his hand tracing patterns on her skin like he was memorizing her through touch. "Tell me about Lagos," he said quietly. "Tell me about your childhood, your family, everything I should have asked 3 years ago." So Janet did. She told him about growing up in Lagos, about the noise and chaos and beauty of her city, about her mother who sold fabrics in the market and put 3 daughters through university on that income, about her sisters who teased her mercilessly and loved her fiercely, about the uncle who taught her to shoot, the aunt who taught her to cook, the grandmother who taught her that steel wrapped in silk was stronger than steel alone. She told him about medical school, about being one of 3 black students in her program in Seoul, about the isolation and determination and sheer stubborn will it took to survive and thrive in a place that didn't always want her. And Minho listened like every word was precious, his fingers never stopping their gentle exploration of her skin, his eyes never leaving her face. "I wish I'd known all of this 3 years ago," he said when she finished. "I wish I'd asked instead of assuming distance was the answer." "You know now," Janet said simply. "That's what matters." They made love that night with desperate tenderness, both of them aware this might be their last night together, both refusing to say it aloud. Every touch was worship, every kiss was prayer, every whispered word was a vow renewed. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Minho whispered against her hair, "I love you, Janet Park. I should have said it every day for 3 years. I'm saying it now. I love you more than breath, more than power, more than my own life." "I love you too," Janet whispered back, "and tomorrow we're going to make sure we get to keep saying it." They fell asleep like that, holding each other against the coming storm, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and refused to let go even as deeper darkness approached. Tomorrow would bring war. Tomorrow would bring Una and her army and a reckoning 3 years in the making. Tomorrow would determine whether love was a weakness to exploit or a strength that conquered all. But tonight, for these few precious hours, they had each other. And that would have to be enough. To be continued. If you're sitting there with your heart racing, desperately needing to know what happens next, then smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because part 2 is going to be absolutely insane. We're talking about a 3-way psychological warfare at the top of Seoul. We're talking about secrets that will rewrite everything you think you know about Minho's past. We're talking about Janet making a choice that will change the game forever. Drop a comment right now. Team Janet or Team Una? Who do you think survives tomorrow night? What do you think Una's real plan is? Because I guarantee you it's not what you think. Hit that like button if this story had you on the edge of your seat. Share it with someone who loves intense romance with high stakes, and I'll see you in part 2, where everything explodes in ways you're not ready for. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next.